Hey everyone, it's Stephanie again, and you are tuned into the review of Married at First Sight, Season 9, Episode 7. So, last night's episode was crazy. There was so much going on. There was a lot of content. They focused on them spending time with family and friends. So, there's always like a family and friends episode where they get together and they have them over or they do an activity together just to really get the vibe after the wedding, because the last time they see each other usually is the wedding, when they first met the other person's spouse. So they get together and you just get to see how the dynamics are going and what the new vibe is, or if there's still old vibes, and so on and so forth. There was so much going on with every couple, so I'm just going to kick it off, and I'm going to try not to be too long-winded about it, but there's a lot of content. So let's kick it off with Deanna and Greg. So Deanna and Greg, I know a lot of people are on the fence with them. I am not on the fence with them. I still am in the space of thinking that they have potential if they work out some of their kinks. We see them get along pretty well. I know a lot of people think that Deanna's kind of cold, which she is, but she's very guarded, and because she has been single for a long time, which doesn't mean she hasn't interacted with other people, but she has not been committed. So for me, the difference, because I know a lot of people have said, well, that doesn't mean she's, not dated. Well, when you're dating, your level of commitment is low, if there at all, because you know that you're not really serious. When you're in a committed relationship, you are committed to also stretching yourself and also, making changes and looking in the mirror, seeing the things you don't like, seeing the thing that's not working in the relationship, and making those changes. So even if she was in many situationships, which is what she calls them, they don't really count for anything, because she really could just check out or do whatever she wanted to do. So we see that come up several times, and I'm glad that we got a little peek so that we can understand her history, not just in being single for 10 years, but what was going on in those 10 years. And we can see that although she may have dated around, they weren't that significant. We also see her dynamic with Greg. Greg continues to be pretty solid dude. I really like Greg. He seems like a really nice guy. Here's the thing with Greg. Greg is not smooth, okay? He is such a sweetheart. Seems like such a nice guy, but he is not smooth. And it often makes things feel a little awkward and a little ingenuine, even though he is being totally genuine, but it feels forced. We noticed her say, because they were discussing, their dynamic, and he's good about saying, listen, I don't want to force you, I don't want to rush you, but I do want to gain more physical intimacy, and they have a good conversation about it. She says, listen, I kind of moved too fast, or I put the cart before the horse in other situations and was hoping that things would develop. And he is like, okay, well, this is not those situations. So I see both sides of those. She is saying, based on her history, based on the past situation she's been in, where she has maybe been intimate early, hoping it would develop feelings in a relationship, she's learning from those mistakes and doesn't want to do that too soon. He, on the other hand, is like, well, this is not that. We're now married. This is a completely different situation. Be that as it may, it's only been 2 weeks, and 2 weeks ago, she didn't really know you. So I think she's being smart, not necessarily guarded in that respect. I think she's just guarded in general. But in that respect, I think she's being intentional about saying, listen, I really want to build a bond before I move forward with him. We get a lot of confirmation last night that she is attracted to him, that she liked him. If you guys noticed, though, because it was his birthday, she was sweet. She showed up in the way that she knows how to show up. She brought him a cookie. She surprised him. She had friends and family over, and they celebrated his birthday. She shows up in the way that she shows up and shows how much she cares, and she even verbalizes, which is huge for her based on what we've seen, that she is really growing feelings for him and really liking him a lot. And that's a huge thing. There is no, I know Jamie and Elizabeth said that they love each other, but there's no chance of really heavy, deep-seated love in 2 weeks. Like, realistically, they've known each other for 2 weeks. So saying that I really like you a lot and I really am happy to be married to you, that is a big deal. And for her to be able to verbalize that, considering she hasn't had to do anything like that in so long, I thought that was huge. Here's where, Greg kind of ruins it. Instead of kind of going with the flow and feeling her out, he he's starting to harp on the physical intimacy thing, which is, I think it's great that he talks about it and puts it out there so that she knows. But, you know, you said it, so let's kind of let it go and let's move on and see how things develop and maybe find like, you know, relaxed ways to get into the mood. But like straight up asking, so you are sexually attracted to me? It's just such a mood killer. It's like, I can see why she's not responsive to that. And I know a lot of women wouldn't be responsive to that. I feel like if he would just wait and continue to just be relaxed. If you notice, she said a lot because he's so relaxed and seeing him in a different environment where he's not thinking so much and how many compliments should I give? And, you know, and it's fine to give compliments. I think it's great. But I think what she is saying is that it is too much sometimes. And then it feels very like questionable, which I can completely see. When he was on the couch and saying, so you are sexually attracted to me, I was like, that's such a mood killer. Like, why don't you just wait and see? And during the party, you know, in her confessional, she was saying, you know, I am starting to be more attracted to him, and that was really attractive, just watching him just be him and relaxed and not overthinking, and if something happens, I'm okay with that. So Deonna has work, but so does Greg. You know, Greg shows up as the less assertive one or less aggressive one, and so we tend to shift blame on Deonna. But if we look at it, no emotions involved. They both have work to do, and he just needs to relax. Maybe some of his issues with his old relationship are coming up. He said that it was toxic. Maybe he felt insecure in that, so he has to overcompensate in this one. I mean, we don't really know too much about that old relationship, but I can see him like thinking a little too much and like checking and double checking, and that's a mood killer. That's like, even if she, you know, first met him and said, oh, I'm super attracted, like that is a mood killer over time. So if he just chills out and relaxes, I think they will be all right. And I think as she let her guard down, he will feel more of an investment from her. And it's great that they're having conversation and talking about what they need and what they're looking forward to and what they like, and so far so good for them. So I still think there's potential there. I think if they kind of work through and continue to communicate effectively, I think they will be all right. So that is Greg and Deonna. So next we have Iris and Keith. So Iris and Keith, yesterday's episode was up and down, okay? There was a lot that went on with Iris and Keith. I think, once again, I still love Iris and Keith together. I think they have so much potential. I think they have the most natural, genuine chemistry of all the couples. They're a little flirting, and they're very comfortable around each other. You know, unfortunately, we see that Keith's grandmother is not doing so well with her health issues, and so this is really early on. And see, this is the thing that takes this experiment into the real world. You know, yes, they're in the real world, they've moved in together, everybody lives in the same everybody lives in the same complex, which I absolutely hate. I absolutely hate that they live in the same complex. It's so cookie cutter. I don't get it. I know that they want to kind of have control of where they reside so that nobody can kick each other out and stuff like that. That makes sense to me, but I prefer if they would like have them in their own space that was reflective of them as a couple and not so cookie cutter. But anyways, besides that, you know, Iris and Keith are doing really well, but, you know, now he's dealing with some of the issues from his family, and it's sad. It's not an easy thing to deal with. It's something that you have to be very transparent about. It's something that you're very emotional about. He's very close to his grandmother, and that's, I believe, if that's his mother's mother. I'm not 100% correct on that, but I believe that that's the case. So there's a lot going on, and Iris is now a part of that. 2 weeks in, she's a part of being his support system and being patient and loving and just being what he needs her to be, which is so great that she was able to feel comfortable enough and feel welcomed enough to be a participant in that whole thing. So I really feel like that will foster a deeper relationship with the two of them. It's no secret that when you go through negative things in life or hardships, they can do one of two things. They can either break you guys or bring you guys closer together. So I definitely think that, especially so early on, will bring them closer together. They're still working their quirks out. She's kind of smart about realizing where she is. So the guys get together, I believe, in the gym complex. The women get together somewhere in the apartment complex, and they're just talking about things. And, you know, she brings up the whole condom issue. And essentially she gets to a point where she's saying, listen, it's probably best to not ask certain questions that won't be beneficial to the relationship. And the other women chime in, yeah, because realistically, what is that going to do to the present? Like, the day you guys met is what matters. You can't really account for all these things that happened even the day before because you weren't a factor then. It's not like you were a traditional couple that were together before, and, you know, those things count. Those things don't count. So I'm glad that Iris was able to reel that back in. And I'm glad that the other women were able to support her in that way. And that's a positive of having like the right friends around you or the right circle around you, because they can help calm your crazy when you're like spinning and you're inside of your head and you want to do all these things. Well, you know, you can either have friends who support that nonsense, or you can have friends who bring you back to a place of resolve and a place of reality and really ask you those questions. What would be the point? What is the goal here? Like, does that even really matter? How would that benefit your relationship? So I'm glad to see them be able to have that conversation, and for her to be able to even say that to herself and say, listen, that wouldn't benefit my relationship. So it's not something I needed to do. I think she just wanted to kind of talk about it with the girls and just get their opinion. But I think she even came to that on her own. So I'm really proud of her for that. They end up having like a housewarming. This is where we start to see some of like the neurotic tendencies that Iris has. I mean, we've seen them before, but I think we're hyper focusing on it right now because now she's having other people in her space. And so it's beyond trying to control just Keith or maybe some of the nuances that they have living together, but now it's like trying to control all these other people. Although she's excited and she's social and she's friendly, she also has a very regimented thing about her that she has to control these things, and that will continue to get in her way. That's not something that's realistic for like a long-term relationship or like long-term happiness. You know, you throw a baby in there, babies don't follow a regimented schedule. They do what they want to do. And I think that because she has been able to control her environment for so long, and she's an only child, she has not had to be flexible or, you know, share or learn, or she doesn't have to do any of that. She just gets to be like perfect Iris, and that's great until now. So they have people over for this housewarming, getting together. Everybody's having fun. They're having good conversation. Nothing is too awkward. They have really great chemistry. And then his friends go into the fridge. And she loses it because she sees his friends pouring their lemonade, and that was the lemonade that she bought, I guess, for the rest of the week, not for the party, and it turns into this thing, and she has an attitude. It's too much. And these are the things, like, when we think about, like, certain things that affect relationships negatively, it's not always the bigger things. It's often sometimes small things over time that become big things. So this reaction a bunch of times can be overwhelming, and we even hear Keith say something like there are certain differences that they have that maybe they may not be able to work through. So she found it extremely disrespectful, and she took it personally that his friends would go in the fridge and take her lemonade, and he's kind of like, and once again, Keith is true to kind of who Keith is. He's very much like, it's not a big deal. They're like, they're friends. It's like not something that can't be replaced. Like, they're welcome. And she feels the complete opposite. That's what I bought for XYZ. That wasn't for the party. She puts people on like a 2-drink minimum, which is kind of uncomfortable because it's like, if you're welcoming, you know, unless they're doing something like outwardly disrespectful, you kind of just have to just let it go. She's not into it. He basically says that, you know, it's because you're an only child, you know, that you've never kind of had to do those things. And she doesn't really care. Iris has got to get it together. And this is just something that she has to learn for life. And I think it's really important to invest in yourself, because then your spouse will reap the benefits of that. A lot of times people will do things for their spouse and it doesn't have longevity because you're not really doing it because you're genuinely wanting to do it. You're doing it just to get a response, and then over time you will stop doing it. So she really needs to work on herself, because that is not a welcoming energy. it'll make people feel uncomfortable, and so they won't want to be around because they don't know what will set you off. And it will turn him off too, because he'll feel like he can't be himself. He'll feel like super wound up because he doesn't know what will make her tick, and he won't want to be around too. So that's something that she has to really be careful of. The whole lemonade situation was like not that big of a deal, but for someone like that, it is. And she has to learn that everything is not a battle. You know, it is replaceable. And here's the thing, she really didn't like them going in their fridge. And Keith didn't think anything of it. So an area for improvement for them would be learning what your spouse's boundaries are. If you're single, which they have been single and they've been living alone, that might be fine, Keith, for your friends to go into the fridge. It's your house. They come to their homeboy's house. It's fine. She may not like that. Like, your space is different when you have your spouse there, and so boundaries are different. If your parent comes over and you're single, they might be able to go into the closet or into the bedroom or whatever, change things around. But that might not be the case when you have a spouse around. Now it's like, it's our space, so you kind of have to respect that you cannot do the same things. What I wish she would have done, and what would have been beneficial for her, is to learn how to express the same thing without being overly reactive about it, and just saying what it is. Listen, I know that you're friends, and I know that you're comfortable with them coming in and out, and it's always been that way, and they can go in your fridge, but now this is our fridge. So I would be happy if you could just respect the fact that, you know, I don't like that, and just let them know, listen, it's not my space anymore, it's our space. So just, you know, if you need something, let me know, because I can get that. Like, there's certain people who come to my house who they can go in the fridge, and then there's certain people that I'd be like, okay, because that's just a level of comfort thing. So I understand that she may not want everybody in that space, totally get that, but I think if she learns to communicate in a less frantic way, in a softer way, in a way that is more communicative of how she's feeling, not combative, because it becomes combative and it becomes controlling, I think he would respond, because Keith seems very good-natured to me, and I think he would understand that. And even if he didn't care, like, there are certain things my husband does not care about, but he knows I do. So he's like, listen, this is what she wants, like, you know, and certain things I don't care about that he does. So I say, okay, well, this is how he likes it. I don't care, but I'm going to do it because he likes it that way. It's just a respect thing, because you are sharing a life together. You are sharing a space together. So that's what I would say for Iris and Keith, but specifically for Iris. She doesn't know how to communicate when she is in a space of being uncomfortable. So that's Iris and Keith. I still, you know, they still have a lot of potential. They still work very well together. It's just these things will come up, and that's why I always say marriage is a mirror. There's certain prep for marriage that you can do before marriage, and then there's certain things that only come up when you're in that situation, when you're married, and that's when you can turn around and say, oh, I responded this way, maybe I need to do it that way. You weren't put in that position before to know how you would respond, or there wasn't another person there to kind of show you what you look like, which isn't always so good. So that's the long and short of Iris and Keith. Next, I mean, we have our two wild card couples this week, but next I will kick it off with Jamie and Elizabeth. Okay, so Jamie and Elizabeth, they have a lot going on this episode. They meet with, you know, the parents. The parents come over to the new house. They have a really good vibe together, as we have seen. The parents are getting along. Everybody held their breath, I know, when Elizabeth's dad came, and he's still a little weird. You know, they're joking about a lot of things, which I thought was funny, how they were joking about, because her mother said, did you guys consummate the marriage? So they're all joking and nobody wants to hear it, and it's funny, and the dad, you can tell, is like really, really uncomfortable. And it wasn't the kind of uncomfortable where it's just like it's dad, so duh, he doesn't want to hear that. It was just like this jealous thing, and their dynamic is still a little weird to me. It's like he doesn't want to make room for another man in her life, and he's finding it hard to be the second man, but you're not supposed to be the first. Your life as a parent is not to be the companion of your child. Like, at some point you got to move over. Like, there are seasons of where you belong. So here's this guy, and she looks excited and she looks so happy, and he's like kind of saying, well, if she's this happy, then he must be a good guy, but it's so reluctantly. So we see that weirdo vibe, but other than that, they had a good time. The thing that rubbed me the wrong way during their experience was they asked about kids again, and they both lied about it. And I guess because you lied already, you have to keep lying. But, they lucked out by being matched together for this experiment. Otherwise, they would have really given somebody who wanted children the short end of the stick. And it's just really not fair. And it's just, I don't know. That whole scene really rubbed me the wrong way, because then eventually they'll have to come clean with their families about, not really wanting kids and both being on the same page about that. And then it's like years of lying about that whole thing. So other than that, they enjoyed each other. We see them really get into their first real fight, though. I mean, they've had like arguments on the honeymoon and stuff like that. She's snappy on the boat. We see them have like a real fight that is connected to a lot of like deeper foundational things. So after the family leaves, she starts asking him questions about the divorce. How long has his father been with his stepmom, and when did his parents get a divorce, and how long? And these are rather simple questions from just the regular viewer's perspective. But we see Jamie like pretty much shut down and get very angry very quickly. I think she was like 2 questions in where we started noticing like physical changes with him, where he was just not interested in answering any of those questions. And he got very, very mad and very nasty. He basically kind of turned it around on her. He said, I don't want to answer these questions. The thing that is concerning is that that's part of your family. That's part of your history. That's part of, the dynamic. That's part of how you respond, the way you respond. We hear that, the divorce between his parents was a very hard divorce. So I wonder what that did to him and what role he may have played in watching or maybe being a part of, because sometimes as a child you get pulled into adult drama, and how that plays a role. I mean, we can see it doesn't play a positive role in how he responds when he's not in a good place, but we see a lot of wrong with her, and we've been kind of saying, oh, Jamie's flexible, and we're surprised that Jamie's doing so great. But now we're seeing a different side of Jamie, which everyone has that, but now we're seeing a different side of Jamie where he may not be all that we have seen him to be. So he gets really upset, and then he kind of starts poking at her. And here's the thing. You can have a concern with your spouse or someone, but the timing of when you bring up that concern is very telling. So he basically brings up that, in a nutshell, that she's the spoiled daddy's girl who like really doesn't have many goals and is working for her dad because it's easy. That's not what he says, but that's what he means, because he kind of asks her question like, everybody kind of asks me what you do, and I don't really know what you do, and you told me one thing at the wedding, but it's not what you do. And she's like, yeah, he gave me a job, I'm taking advantage of it, I have a lot of goals. Elizabeth does seem all over the place, and she does seem very spoiled and whatnot, but she's kind of just answering these questions kind of casually at this point, and he doesn't like it. And his background is more regimented, it's more accomplished, it's more focused. She is the wild child, she is all over the place. So this is where I think we all knew inherently that they would have issues, because they're so opposite in that way. He does not like that, and he doesn't like that he can't even pin down what she does. He doesn't like that she's not accomplished on her own merit, and we don't know her full background, but with what she's presenting, it kind of just seems like, daddy has a position for me and I'm going to take advantage of that. And I think her goal, based on what she was saying, is taking advantage of the opportunity that her father gives her in order to make something else happen. But once again, she's very casual about that. I don't even think she communicates it as effectively as I just did, but he kind of pokes at her being, not very accomplished, not goal-oriented, kind of just spoiled and just taking advantage of this situation, and basically says that it's nepotism, and she's offended. And it turns into something else. So it goes from talking about his family, and he's not wanting to talk about it, to talking about what she does and what she doesn't really do and what she's not doing. And then it goes into this thing about their relationship and how he comes home grouchy every single night. Now this is 2 weeks, so I'm like, what is going on here? Because the first few days you guys get married and then you go to the honeymoon for like 5 days or so. So when did you guys have time to have all of these issues is kind of what I was thinking. But he comes home allegedly grouchy every time and wants to stretch himself out and or wants her to stretch herself out and be a little more serious and take him a little more seriously and have communication and not be so guarded. And I can see that about her, that she makes a lot of jokes to kind of push away real issues. He's very frustrated with that. But the way he goes about saying it isn't the best, and then she loses it because she doesn't have any coping skills. Elizabeth has zero coping skills. She does not know how to communicate effectively. So she starts spazzing out. She starts speaking to him disrespectfully. They both start speaking to each other disrespectfully. And she's up to here with her anxiety is what she says, and you suck, and this isn't great, and I don't do enough. And then it rolls into sex, and I mean, it was like watching a circus. that conversation, at certain points I did laugh out loud because I just couldn't believe what I was watching. It turns into a circus. And this is where you see the reality of how they probably won't last long. And that was a concern for me at the beginning. That's why I was so surprised that they were even getting along. But it's very easy to get along on a beautiful island and everything's paid for. Like, it's very easy to have a good time there. You know, I listened to a sermon many years ago, but the preacher was talking about where you want to be in a relationship. And he gave an example of a red chair, a green chair, a black chair. And he basically says, you know, the black chair is where the relationship is cold and you guys don't care about each other anymore and there's no love there. Everything is kind of dead. The green chair is when things are good. Sometimes they're great and sometimes they're not so great. And sometimes you guys struggle, but sometimes you guys do really well. And then the red chair is passionate and fiery and everything's so great and you guys are intimate and you guys are having a blast and everything's wonderful. And, you know, he basically says that a lot of people want to be, and he asked people, where would you want to be? And most people said the red chair, you know, and he said a lot of people want to be in the red chair, but that's not where you actually need to be. And that's not really the chair that'll keep the longevity of a relationship. So you definitely don't want to be in the black chair because the black chair is dead. It's cold. It's gone. Relationship done. There's nothing there. The red chair is, although it's very enticing and it looks like it's the best chair, the red chair also is so fiery that it could like literally burn you up. Like there is such thing as too much of a good thing. So if you're always on a high, at some point that will combust. So we want to be in the green chair. The green chair is stable. The green chair is a long-term chair. Some things are good, some things are bad. You're working on things. You're always working to develop. If there are kinks that come in, we deal with those things. We enjoy each other. We celebrate good times. We deal with the things when they're not so great. This train moves on forever, but one train doesn't move and one train like takes off and at some point falls off the tracks. So they are, to me, in the red chair. And that's why initially they seem so appealing, surprisingly, but it doesn't have longevity because if we watch this conversation, we see how explosive and unnecessarily combative the conversations become. We see two people who don't communicate well. She doesn't communicate well at all, but neither does he because we've seen him shut down a couple of times when she becomes a little erratic, but now he also shuts down when he's not comfortable, which I said a few videos ago. I wonder where that came from because the first time she got really upset, he just left his body and he was just like, I don't want to deal with this, which I get you don't want to deal with it, but you still kind of have to deal with it. So we see two people who struggle with communication in a completely different way. And then they take low blows, you know, when you're bringing in sex and it's just so unnecessary. And it's a testament to having rules about the way that you argue. Me and my husband, we have rules about arguments. Like there's just certain things that you don't do, and draw the line, guys. That's just a tip for you guys. Draw the line in the way that you want to communicate, especially when you're angry. And even if you do cross it, For the most part, you won't, because if you're committed to the lines that you've drawn, you won't. But in the event that you do, because every now and then you will know you have crossed the line because you've drawn it. But if you haven't drawn it, then all bets are off, and then it becomes this big, crazy, nasty thing that you didn't want it to be. And then you might also get into the habit of treating each other that way, and it's unnecessary. It doesn't have to be that way. So he leaves, and she says something like, you know, he always leaves, this is what you always do, just you run away. And I think she runs away while staying there, to be honest. I think in all of her hysteria, it's her way of getting out of there, but physically she's there, so she thinks she's doing a better job. But it is definitely wrong that Jamie walked out. That's not acceptable. Unless things are gonna get like violent, it's just not acceptable. And so early. Like, you guys have been together for 2 weeks, and really 1 real week of real life. The other week was the wedding and the honeymoon. So him walking away is a big red flag, just because that just shows his level of commitment and his level of coping. Like, neither one of them have really good coping skills. He presents better because he will at least address the situation and want to talk about it, but I haven't seen them have like really good follow through. Even the other discussions and disagreements were like, they washed over them a little bit. Like, they addressed them, but not really. And here was a situation where they really could have done some stuff. And I think it would be great for one of the experts to come help them communicate. Other than that, I don't see it working out. So that was a mouthful about about Jamie and Elizabeth, but they had a lot going on. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I definitely want to see how that turns out. I hope that he doesn't come back and is like, I'm sorry I left, and brings her flowers, because that's not going to cut it, because that behavior is more damaging than fixing it with flowers. So that is that. Last but not least, we have Matt and Amber. So Matt and Amber, I like Matt and Amber, okay? I think that Matt and Amber like each other. I think that they're learning to like each other. I think that Amber really, really likes Matt. I think Matt likes Amber. I think that he's like, oh, she's cool, you know, she's a good girl, like, but I don't get the sparks from him. And like I said, I've said this on a couple of videos, I don't think that they would have seen each other and connected. I just don't get that vibe. I think that there's a lot of things going on here. I think that he is running away from whatever his family issues are. I think because he is so isolated, he felt maybe abandoned in some ways and wanted to team up with someone to kind of create his own little village. And I think that now that he is regretting it, because he really doesn't know how to be a part of a team. And the irony is, he is on a basketball team, but that's a completely different team. He doesn't really know how to do that well. He has very individualistic thoughts and behaviors. And I talked about the bathroom last week. Him being in the own bathroom is not the big issue for me, because in my dream home, I have my own bathroom and my own closet. It's the way that he does it, and because he already has so many other red flags that look like I want to be away, that is what makes it a problem, and that is what is triggering her. It's not, because I know I read a lot of you guys' comments, I'd like my own bathroom, and it's not so much about the own bathroom, it's what it represents for somebody who already presents as if they don't want to be there. So we see her talk with the girls about it, and they're on the fence, and most of them don't have a problem with it. And so she's like, okay, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But then she goes to her family's house, and she takes Matt with her, and she talks to her twin sister, and her twin sister kind of confirms what she feels. And that's what matters. Like, it won't be the same thing for everyone. Your friends may not have the same issues that you have. It doesn't mean that your issue is any less significant if that doesn't work for you. So, Matt and Amber, I don't know. On the way, I'm jumping around, but on the way to her family's house for dinner, she was excited to have him there, and they're having a good conversation. And he says some really questionable things that lets you know, like, what are you doing here? Like, I literally was like, why did you do this? Like, was it a bet? You won, if that's the case. Like, why are you here? Because they start talking about kids. He says, yeah, I want kids for sure. And then he says, but not for, based on XYZ time, not for another like 5 to 8 years. What? You did this experiment and you thought that anybody who wanted to be married so badly that they would get married at first sight would want to wait 5 to 8 years to have a child? Like, that's crazy to me. And she automatically, we see Amber automatically just stop. Like, okay, maybe, and I like that she says what comes to mind for her. Maybe you should have been with somebody else. Maybe I'm not the wife for you. And she's like heartbroken because I have no intention of waiting that long. And maybe this is not what I needed it to be or who I needed to be with. Maybe we're not matched really well. And then he says something, and I don't know if this was the confessional or him on camera actually, because I was too busy like talking to the screen. But he says something like, the thing that worries him about, and I think this was the confessional, the thing that worries him about having a child, even though he says, yeah, of course I want to have children. I definitely, he even says a little name about a child in the future. He says that you're connected to that person for the rest of your life. So that's what worries him. So this is bigger than Amber. This is you, okay? Because you're connected to anybody. Whether you wait 8 years to have a child or you have one today, you're connected to whoever you have that child with. Like, it seems so asinine for him to even say that he wants children, and then in a different breath, his concern is that he's connected to the person that he has children with. This is so much family dynamic trauma happening, and that's why we're not getting enough background information, so that's why it seems all over the place. But it's very, I mean, if we did, we could probably connect the dots completely to where it is. And his trauma is showing, and that's just what it is. And unfortunately, Amber is on the receiving end of that, and I hate that for her because she's all in and he is all over the place. So you can see she's deflated when she gets to her family's house, but she tries to kind of pep it up and stuff like that. And they have dinner or lunch together, and they ask, oh, okay, how well do you think you know so-and-so? And it's very telling because where he says 5 or 6 because she's so chatty and whatever, she says 3. 3 is low. 3 is really low. Not that it should be any other number after 2 weeks, but to spend so much time with someone, 3 is not a good number. I mean, it really, really isn't. And it just shows how closed out she feels and how guarded he is because he's not giving her much to go with. And, they're saying, well, his middle name, his favorite foods. It's like, that's not enough. I mean, I know we're trying to be positive here, but that's not enough. Like, you guys have had real conversations about real things. You guys got married at first sight. Like, you fast forward the conversation to more than, do you like Twix or Skittles? Like, we can go a little deeper than that. So that's also a very red flag. But the biggest red flag of all is that Matt goes out one night and he does not come back home. And that's where the episode leaves off. It's about 2-something in the morning. She's called him 4 or 5 times. He has not come back home. She is really upset. She's crying. She called her dad. She doesn't want to do this. She doesn't know why she likes him. And I think that, yes, she's upset, so she's kind of saying a lot of things, but I think a lot of those things are reflective to how she feels really deep down. I think she likes him, and she knows why she likes him, but she questions why she likes him so much based on what she's getting and based on her experience, which only she can know. Only she can know the full wholeness, 100% of her experience. And when you're getting to know someone and they're letting you in and you guys are vibing versus feeling like you have to work so hard to get like basic stuff. And I think that's where she is. So where she can see, I really like him. She's wondering, why do I really like him based on these things? And it's really heartbreaking to watch her kind of fall apart like that. Because where are you? Like, where are you? Even if she didn't call, like, you're not home, you should probably call and say, hey, I'm here, or I'll be home soon, or I'll be home at this time, or this is what I'm doing. She has no idea what's going on. She hasn't heard from you, and you haven't called her. So she's not a priority for you, and your marriage isn't a priority, because if it was, then you would contact the person you're married with and let them know what's going on with you. So it goes from being you know, kind of worried to sad to angry to sad. And it's just really hard for her to, it's hard to watch her because it's completely unnecessary, like completely unnecessary that they're having this experience right now. Because, like, what's happened? Like, I don't know. I don't know what's happened, but it's something so simple. If he would have just called, babe, I'm playing basketball, or I'm hanging out with so and so, it just, nothing is unacceptable. So I don't know. I don't see it long term for them too. Up until this video, I kind of like did not want to do predictions so early, but Jamie and Elizabeth, I don't see it long term, even if they stay together past the 8 weeks. Matt and Amber, I definitely don't see it long term. And I feel worse for Amber because I think she is genuinely in this and Matt is not. So that's it. I think this has been my longest review probably. But that's it. Let me know what you guys thought. I mean, there's a lot going on. So let me know what you guys thought. As always, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like, and I will see you guys next week. And I will give you an update on the live streaming when I get more information. I did not forget. All right, everyone have a great week. Bye.